Welcome back to part 2 of our video series on how to stop being a rescuer in love. If you feel as though you are a rescuer in love and slip into trying to save your partners in order to save yourself, then I recommend that you stop this video now, go back, watch part 1, because we are going to introduce a case study that will allow you to understand the mentality of the rescuer, why we have a tendency to sacrifice ourselves in love. We look at major themes that pop up when we do this. And in this segment, we are going to start reframing all of that using a focus wheel exercise so that you can start to open up the possibilities for love in your life in a vastly different and more equal way. So if you haven't watched part 1, stop the video now, go watch part 1, then come back here for part 2. Okay, so remember in part 1, we took a look at identifying the signs of rescuer behavior and why we do it in the first place. We also started to debunk several self-sacrificing myths in codependent thinking and specific themes that emerge when we struggle with this in relationships. Now, in the second segment, we're going to focus primarily on demonstrating how sometimes you have to be the bad guy in order to love someone unconditionally. And we're also going to provide some empowering affirmative statements so that you can let go and move on. So I encourage you to stick with me until the end. And if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract the soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions, which I call the MacWilliam method. The content on my YouTube channel is derived from my online courses, which you can learn more about through the link in the caption of this video. If you would like to learn more about your attachment style, you can take the 4-question quiz. If you like what you see in here and you want to learn more, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So now that we have identified and we have debunked some of these limiting, beliefs for the rescuer, we can start to shift our mindset and our perceptions with a focus on reframing these thoughts and ideas. So the purpose of a focus wheel is really to focus our attention upon that which we desire and reframe our present thought patterns into statements of affirmation that grease the wheels and allow our energy to flow in a receptive and in a more lubricated way. So this way we can open up wide enough to receive everything that we desire. And that is instead of kind of pinching it off with ideas of deservedness or worthiness, because these are constructions of the ego, and they are built on a blueprint of early survival concerns of the attachment system. Okay. So in essence, a focus wheel is just a sequence of questions that challenge pre-existing assumptions. And I call it a wheel because inevitably you can circle back to it and continue to kind of spiral deeper and deeper and deeper as far and as long as you want to go. Okay. So a reframing bridge is basically made up of the more positive and high vibe affirming reframing statements that we create to debunk this existing thinking and to adopt new beliefs that make the desire possible, right? So I want to go over some of these questions together. I'm going to pull out where we see this popping up in Anne's experience, and then we're going to create a reframing statement to help Anne shift this, right? To help any rescuer shift this. Okay. So here's the first question. What is true of personal power and love? How much influence does one have over a partner? How much influence is too much or too little? Okay. Well, in the case study that we explored in the first part of this segment, our beautiful woman, Anne, believes that she is both all powerful, while at the same time powerless, right? But the truth is that no one is all powerful or completely helpless. There are degrees of emotional influence between human beings, yes. But we do get to decide how much we will allow that influence to continue to impact us and for how long. We also have tremendous resources to put boundaries in place to mitigate someone's influence over us. So a reframing a statement that we might adopt here is, I enjoy the connectedness of relationships with firm but flexible boundaries. And this allows me to appreciate intimacy without losing my personal power and autonomy. Okay. So the second question is, what is true of emotional responsibility in love? Can you make someone feel a certain way? Is a partner responsible for how you feel all the time? Whose responsibility is it for organizing your inner emotional life and how you respond to things? What are feelings anyway? Right? So in our case study, Anne tends to assume too much responsibility for Tom's feelings while making him responsible for her inability to move on. But the truth is, we are all responsible for managing our own feelings, recognizing that feelings are energy moving through the body. And feelings respond to how we choose to express them and what we decide to focus upon. Okay. So here's a reframing statement for this piece. I recognize that while my feelings may respond to outside influences, the feelings themselves are still mine. They come from me, and I am responsible for managing them. I do this by acknowledging that they are important information, not to be ignored nor placed in charge. And I'm happy to know that they will grow or dissolve based upon my intentional acknowledgement. So the third question is, what is true of control in love? Who can you control in your relationship, and what can't you control in your relationship? So, with power and emotional influence, Anne seems to think, in our case study, Anne seems to think that she holds quite a bit of control in this circumstance. But the truth is, you cannot control how someone else thinks and feels in their inner space, or how they internally respond to those thoughts and feelings in their inner space, right? What you can control is how honestly and authentically you show up for yourself, so that you are also showing up to the relationship as your most honest and authentic self. Only then will you really know the truth of genuine compatibility or not, right? So the reframing statement here would be, I'm happy to know that my control only extends as far as my own actions, attitudes, and responses. And this allows me to know and understand others from a place of mutual free will and authenticity. So the fourth question would be, how do relationships work? What are some fundamental truths about the way the world works and relationships work in general? What about, especially, what are some truths that contradict the false assumptions that our woman Anne here is making? What newer, truer, positive beliefs would she have to adopt? So in our case example, Anne seems to think that pain and rejected feelings can be avoided if she sacrifices herself on Tom's behalf, right? But this is only going to perpetuate more feelings of pain and rejection for her because she's not getting her needs met. And she'll be unendingly rejecting herself if she commits to a man that won't commit to her, right? So the truth is, our outer realities can be a mirror of our inner dialogue, including our relationships. And the more that Anne learns to listen to the voice of her own inner guidance, which we know she's tapped into, in the direction of what she truly wants and needs, the less power that inner critic is going to have over her. And so then she won't have to define her worth and her value based on a need to feel special, which keeps her stuck in a cycle of fear and rejection and subject to irrelevant comparisons and judgment, right? So the reframing statement here is, it's a blessing to understand that my outer reality responds to my inner dialogue, because it means the more that I connect to and listen to my own inner guidance, increasingly the material world will effortlessly fall into place. The fifth question would be, how can fear move us forward? So, what useful information does fear usually provide on a deeper emotional and spiritual level when we are in pursuit of something, let's say, greater or more expanded for ourselves? Well, Anne appears to be most afraid of the torment of her own guilt and shame for moving on. And this causes her to suppress her need for autonomy. And it suggests that in pursuing her own power and success, separate from Tom, she too will ultimately be left alone and abandoned as a punishment for choosing herself. So this is actually really good information because it's a flashing neon sign pointing Anne towards what needs to be addressed next inside of her. If she is to step across a threshold of growth and expansion on a spiritual level and in love. Okay, so here's a reframing statement. I am capable of finding a loving partner that honors, supports, and encourages growth for all parts of myself, and I am fully deserving of it. My happiness does not come at the expense of others, no matter how much they might try to convince me that it does. And it is safe for me to be myself and to express my power. So, I want to offer some final thoughts to kind of wrap up this particular segment. So, for Anne to end this relationship and to differentiate herself for the sake of her own growth and survival and to stop enabling Tom, she needs to disidentify with Tom's inner child and to start identifying with her own. She needs to see herself as a separate individual from Tom. She needs to prioritize and to advocate for her own inner hapless victim above his by shirking off her inner critic. And so initially, this is going to feel mean to Anne. It's going to feel like she's abandoning him and therefore herself, because remember, unconsciously, she believes she is Tom. Tom is her, right? There's no boundaries between them. And so Anne has to learn to embrace the inner bad guy by reinforcing her boundaries in order to establish that necessary line between herself and Tom so she can get on with her life. And so some of the fundamental emotional and energetic states that she will go through in order to affect this individuation is going to include fear. It's going to include grief. It's going to include shame, anxiety, maybe even jealousy or envy or guilt. All those feelings she's likely going to have to navigate. And that's okay, because that is all a part of the journey. And so the challenge is to kind of lean into those feelings and to allow them to run their course so that you release the constriction around them. And it is possible to move into the next phase of growth, which is going to benefit from what becomes a much wider emotional range that she just opened up to in the process, right? So I have a couple of videos that will help with this. I have a video on how to heal the wounded inner child. I also have a video on how neediness can empower you, which will give you some exercises to play with. And I have a video called Art Therapy Techniques, Tools for Secure Attachment. All of these are videos I have on my YouTube channel, and I can include the links to those in the caption of the video. Now, lastly, I would just have you remember that as a rescuer, when you're not used to being confident, then confidence feels like arrogance. Okay. When you're not used, or when you are used to being passive, being assertive feels like overt aggression. When you're not used to getting your needs met, prioritizing yourself is going to feel like selfishness. Okay. And when you're not used to honoring your boundaries, boundary setting is going to feel mean. Okay. And when you are trying to make a change for the future, your existing comfort zone is probably not a good benchmark. Okay. So if you feel afraid, I would encourage you to be grateful for that feeling, because it is a road sign pointing you towards the next stop on the road to what I'm going to call spiritual expansion. Okay. And specific to this audience, finding that in love, right?